All right, so today we're diving deep into fake news in India, and we've got a lot to cover with this really interesting mix of sources, news articles, some academic research, even some social media posts. It really paints a picture of how big of a problem this really is. You might think that would never happen to me, but fake news is often made to take advantage of what we already believe.
Well,
It can be really easy to fall for, even if you think you're informed. In fact, one of the things that really stood out to me from these sources was this statistic about violence. Apparently, at least 25 people in India were killed just because of rumors on WhatsApp. It's scary to think about how misinformation can be so dangerous.
yeah, it really shows you how something that starts online can end up hurting people in the real world. And what's really worrying about India is how big and complicated the problem is. I mean, think about it, over 1 billion people, so many languages. Plus, everyone's getting online so fast, it's almost like a perfect storm for misinformation to spread.
Absolutely. And it's not just like silly stories or pranks. One of the articles on the front line of India's WhatsApp fake news war shows how fake news is being used for political reasons, like to gain power. They talk about this case with a journalist from Bangladesh, and he worked with someone from an Indian news site, and they were spreading false information about Sonia Rahul Gandhi. It was this crazy conspiracy theory saying that Sonia Gandhi was connected to some foreign spy agency.
Oh, wow. That shows how fake news can be used to change what people think about politicians and maybe even change election results. And it's even more powerful in India because a lot of people only get their news from WhatsApp, so they just believe whatever they see there.
Right. It's like they're stuck in this bubble where nobody's checking if the information is true or not. And to make things worse, a lot of people in India are new to the internet, so they might not know how to tell if something is real or fake. There's actually a statistic in a DW article that says over 400 million Indians using the internet don't have the education to figure out if the information they're reading online is good or not.
Wow, that's a lot of people. And that lack of digital literacy is a real problem. It means people are more likely to believe anything, especially if it already fits with what they think or if it makes them feel scared.
Exactly. And this gets to the core of how fake news works in India. It's not just about the technology. It's about using things that people already believe to trick them. Like, remember that story from the on the Frontline article about the 5 workers who were killed in Maharashtra because of those rumors about child kidnapping on WhatsApp? Those rumors played on people's fears and made them do something terrible.
Yeah, it's awful. And it's those deep-seated biases, those things people already believe that make fake news so effective. It just confirms what they already think so they don't even question it.
And it's not just about violence. Remember the fake news about the Nipah virus in Kerala? People were so scared they stopped buying chicken. It really hurt the poultry industry there. It shows that fake news can have all sorts of consequences, like hurting people's jobs and the economy.
It really does. It reminds us that fake news can affect everyone, not just individuals, but whole communities and industries. And that's why it's so important to understand how fake news works. We need to look beyond just the individual stories and figure out what's causing it to spread.
So, what are some of the main things that make India so vulnerable to fake news?
Well, one of the biggest things, like we talked about, is how quickly internet access is growing, especially through phones. It's great that more people are getting online, but a lot of them don't know how to be safe or how to tell if something is true.
Right. And that's where platforms like WhatsApp come in. It's not just individuals sharing stuff, it's about how the platform itself is designed. Because WhatsApp uses these private groups and secret messages, it's easy for misinformation to spread without anyone knowing.
Yeah, that makes sense. That lack of transparency, not being able to see what's going on makes it really hard to stop fake news on WhatsApp. And there's no real fact checking, so people are on their own. And like we said, that can be a problem when so many people aren't sure how to tell what's real online.
And on top of that, the way these platforms are designed can actually make misinformation spread faster. They often show you things that are exciting or shocking, even if they're not true. So even if you're not looking for fake news, it can still find you.
It's almost like they're designed to keep you hooked, even if it means showing you things that aren't true. And to make things worse, there are people who actually make money from creating and spreading fake news. The Fake News in India Wikipedia article talks about how some people and organizations profit from making things go viral, even if they're lies.
So they're basically taking advantage of people's attention to make money, even if it means spreading lies. That's messed up. And this brings us to the whole political side of fake news in India.
Right, this is where things get really interesting. There's a study, the title's pretty straightforward. Nearly half of the fake news stories in India are political. Study. It found that a huge amount of the fake news in India is political. People use it to attack their opponents, spread propaganda, and change how people see political parties.
And remember that story about the journalists spreading lies about the Gandhis? That's just one example of how fake news can be used to target politicians and maybe even affect elections. It's a real danger to democracy.
Absolutely. And it's not just about spreading lies, it's about making people distrust real news sources. When people are constantly bombarded with fake news, they start to doubt everything, even the truth.
It's like they're trying to create a world where facts don't matter
Yeah.
and truth is whatever you want it to be. That's really dangerous because it makes it hard for people to make good decisions, both for themselves and for society as a whole.
Yeah, it undermines the whole idea of having an informed public. If people can't trust any information, how can they make good decisions? And it's something we're seeing all over the world, this distrust in the news and more misinformation. It's a big problem with a lot of causes, social, political, even technological.
So if it's everywhere, what can we do about it? Is there even a way to fight back against something this big?
It's definitely not easy, but I think we can at least make it less harmful. And it starts by understanding that there are a lot of different things we need to do.
So it's not just about finding every single piece of fake news.
Right. It's about figuring out what's causing it in the first place. We need to think about individual responsibility, what the platforms are doing, and even what society as a whole can do.
Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
So let's break it down. What do you mean by individual responsibility?
It means we need to teach people how to figure out what's true online. We need to help them think critically, question what they believe, and learn how to check sources.
So basically, become our own fact checkers.
Kind of, yeah. And luckily, there are resources out there to help us. Lots of fact-checking groups like Alt News, Boom, and Factly. They have tips on their websites. Some even have tools that can tell you if a website might be unreliable.
That's cool. But what about people who don't even know about these resources? Or people who aren't really comfortable with the internet?
Well, that's where education and awareness campaigns come in. We need to teach kids about media literacy in school, offer classes for adults, and use public service announcements to reach everyone.
Okay, so teaching people the skills they need. What about platform accountability? What are these big tech companies doing about all this?
They have a huge role to play, and honestly, I don't think they're doing enough. We need platforms like WhatsApp, Facebook, and Twitter to be more open about how they work. They need to tell us how they decide what people see and what they're doing to stop fake news.
Right. One of the articles, the Fake News in India Wikipedia page, mentioned that WhatsApp is limiting how much people can forward messages now, and they're adding tags that say forwarded.
Mm.
Do you think that's enough?
It's a start, but I think they can do more. They should invest in better fact-checking, maybe even work with independent fact-checking groups. They also need to find a way to deal with these closed groups where misinformation spreads so easily.
But isn't it hard to control what happens in those private groups, especially with encrypted messages?
It's a challenge, but it's not impossible. There are new technologies that can help spot harmful content without actually reading people's messages. Like, AI could look at how messages are forwarded or what words are used to find things that might be fake news.
So it's about finding a balance between privacy and safety.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important for everyone to work together. Tech companies, politicians, researchers, and regular people all need to be part of the solution.
Speaking of working together, the Wikipedia article also mentioned those groups we talked about earlier, Alt News, Boom, and Factly. They're doing a lot to fight fake news, right?
They're doing amazing work. They're checking if viral claims are true, exposing fake news campaigns, and giving people real information. They're also teaching journalists and the public how to spot fake news.
That's awesome. But it sounds like a tough job. I mean, those fact checkers are often attacked online and even face legal problems.
It's true. It's not easy for them, but their work is really important, and we need to support them. We can share their work, donate to their organizations, and speak up when people try to attack them.
Right, we can all do our part. The On the Frontline article mentioned a district official in Kannur who was fighting vaccine hesitancy. He was talking to parents directly and debunking all the myths that were going around. It seems like when people in authority take action like that, it can make a real difference.
Definitely. We need more leaders in government, education, and communities to step up and challenge misinformation. They need to speak out against fake news, promote media literacy, and support fact-checking.
So we've talked about individuals, platforms, and fact-checkers. But what about India specifically? Are there things about India that make it more vulnerable to fake news?
There are definitely some things that make it harder to fight fake news in India. For example, India has a history of tension between different communities, and people who want to spread fake news can use that to their advantage.
And that can lead to real violence,
Right.
like the mob lynchings and the Muzaffarnagar riots. We talked about those earlier.
Exactly. Fake news can be used to make things worse between groups, especially when it targets minorities or uses religious or ethnic prejudices.
Another thing that comes up a lot in our sources is the issue of low digital literacy. With so many people new to the internet, especially in rural areas, they might not know how to be safe online or how to judge information.
That's a big problem. And it's even worse because many people get all their news from social media, so they're constantly seeing things that might not be true, but they don't have the skills to figure that out.
So it's not just about teaching people to spot fake news, it's about teaching them how to be smart online in general.
Exactly. It's about giving them the tools to think critically and be good citizens in the digital age.
It sounds like a huge challenge.
It is, but it's a challenge we have to face if we want to protect our democracies and ourselves from the damage that misinformation can do.
Yeah, it feels like we're at this point where anyone can get information, which is good, but it also means it's easier than ever for bad information to spread. And like we've been talking about, this isn't just some theoretical problem. It has real consequences. It affects everything from our health to politics.
Right. It's a whole new way of how we get information. And it's not just how much information there is, but how fast it moves. I mean, in the past, it would take forever for a lie to spread. But now, with social media, something false can go viral in just a few hours. Nobody has time to check if it's true before it's everywhere.
It's crazy. So if we can't completely stop it, what can we do to protect ourselves?
That's the big question. There's no easy answer, but there are a few things we can do to make it less risky.
Like what?
Well, first of all, don't just believe everything you see online, even if it's from someone you know. Anyone can fall for fake news, even people who mean well.
So don't just take things at face value.
Right. Before you believe something or share it, ask yourself some questions like, where did this information come from? Is it a real news organization, an expert, or just some random person? Has this website or account shared fake news before?
It sounds like we have to do a lot of work to figure out what's real.
It can be a lot, especially these days when everything moves so fast. But there are some tools that can help, like those fact-checking websites we talked about, Alt News, Boom, and Factly. They often have lists of things that have already been debunked, so you can quickly check.
What if I see something that seems fishy, but I can't find anything about it on those sites?
You can always do your own research. Look for proof. Are there real sources cited? Do other news organizations have the same story? If it sounds too good to be true, or if it makes you feel really strongly, that's a sign to be careful.
So look for those warning signs.
Yeah, and be aware of your own biases. We all have them, and they can make us believe things that aren't true. So be critical of information that agrees with what you already think.
That's good advice. So beyond what we can do as individuals, what can be done on a bigger scale?
Well, like we said before, the platforms need to do more. They need better fact-checking, better content moderation, and they need to be more transparent about how they work.
There's a lot of talk about government regulation. Some people think platforms should be responsible for everything they host, like a publisher. Others think that the government shouldn't interfere. What do you think?
It's a tough one. There are good arguments on both sides. I think the important thing is to balance free speech with making sure platforms are accountable. Maybe we need something like independent groups with experts from different fields to watch over the platforms without controlling them.
So checks and balances, but without censorship.
Right. And it's not just about the platforms themselves. We also need to address the bigger problems that make fake news spread. Things like education, supporting real journalism, and fact-checking.
And maybe most importantly, learning to think critically and talk to each other respectfully.
Yeah.
If we can do that, if we can value truth, we'll be better off.
Absolutely. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it. It's how we protect our democracies and make sure truth wins.
Well said. So that wraps up our deep dive into fake news in India. It's a complicated issue, but hopefully now you have some tools to fight back. Remember, we all have a part to play in making sure the information we see is reliable. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and keep diving deep.